I'm going to tell you about a passenger I liked. This is important because most of my stories are about passengers I learned to like. This one I liked from the beginning. That's part of the problem. Her name was Christina. She was 28, maybe 30. She lived in a nice apartment complex in Asbury Park. I picked her up there 4 or 5 times in the span of about 3 weeks, always going to the same place, a high-end restaurant on the waterfront. Always in the evening, always dressed for something. Heels in her hand for the car ride, on her feet by the time she got out.
She tipped generously, 25% every time. She remembered my name after the first ride. She asked about my kids. She told me about her job. She did marketing for a tech company out of New York, but she worked remote, which was why she could afford the nice apartment by the beach. She was funny. She was warm. She had a small laugh that came out as a single syllable, like she was surprised every time something was funny. She didn't flirt. I want to be clear about that. She was friendly. That's a different thing. After a few years of driving, you learn the difference. The 5th time I picked her up, she had been crying. I could tell from the rims of her eyes. She got in and said, "Hi, friend." She had started calling me that. She said, "Just the usual place." I said, "You okay tonight?" She said, "I will be." We drove. She was quiet most of the way. She looked out the window. At one point she said, "Do you ever feel like you became someone you weren't planning to become?" I said, "Sure. I think everyone does." She said, Yeah, I think so too." I dropped her off. She tipped her usual 25%. She said, "Thanks, friend." She walked into the restaurant. I drove home. 3 weeks later, I got a call from a detective. He was very polite. He said he was investigating a case. He said my name had come up because I had been her driver. He asked if I had time to come down to the station and answer some questions. I said yes. I drove there the next morning. I'm going to skip a lot of the part where I sat in a small room and answered questions about a person I thought I had known. I'll tell you what I learned. Christina was not her real name. She was using a stolen identity. She had been using it for about 6 months. The real Christina was a marketing executive who had died of a brain aneurysm at 29 in Connecticut. The woman I had driven had worked at the funeral home that handled her body. She had taken her driver's license, her social security number, her credit history, and slowly become her. The restaurant on the waterfront was where she met men, wealthy men. She would charm them. She would tell them she worked remote in marketing. She would mention her tech job in New York. She would let them assume things and not correct them. 3 of the men, over a period of months, had ended up writing her checks. Not for sex, for business investments, for loans, for an opportunity she had pitched them about a startup that didn't exist. The total was just over $400,000. When I had picked her up that 5th time, crying, that was the day one of the men had figured it out. He had hired a private investigator. The investigator had presented him with the truth. He had called Christina that morning. He had told her he was going to the police. She had spent the next 3 weeks methodically draining her accounts, packing her apartment, and disappearing. She was gone by the time the detective called me. The detective showed me a photo. It was her. Different name, different hair color in the photo. The same small, surprised laugh. You could tell, even in a still picture. Her real name was Megan something. I don't remember the last name. I don't want to remember it. He asked me if I had noticed anything strange. He asked me if she had ever said anything I thought was odd. He asked me if I had any reason, in retrospect, to think she had been deceiving me. I said she was the nicest passenger I had. The detective wrote that down. He thanked me. He gave me his card. He said they probably wouldn't catch her, but they were trying. He said she had done this before. Different city, different name. He said she would do it again.
I drove home from the station, and I sat in my driveway for a long time. Here is the thing I want to tell you. I felt stupid. Of course I felt stupid. I felt like an idiot. I had liked her. I had told her about my kids. I had told her about my son starting college. I had told her things I tell my friends. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that I had to ask myself a question I had never asked myself before. Was she pretending the whole time? When she asked about my kids, was she pretending to care? When she remembered my name on the second ride, was she manipulating me? When she said, "Thanks, friend," was that part of the act? I don't know. I will never know. Here is what I have come to believe after thinking about it for a long time. I think some of it was real. I think you can be a con artist and also be a person who likes the driver who picks you up 4 times in 3 weeks. I think you can scam wealthy men out of $500,000 and also feel something genuine when a kind man tells you about his son going to college. I think people are not one thing. I think she could have been all of it at once. The warm passenger, the cold thief, the woman who had become someone she wasn't planning to become. I think the question she asked me in the car, "Do you ever feel like you became someone you weren't planning to become?" was the realest thing she said. I don't think it was a manipulation. I think she meant it. I think she was telling me what was wrong with her life, and I didn't have the ears to hear it, because I had assumed she was happy. I had assumed everything about her, based on the apartment and the tips and the small laugh. I had told myself a story about her. The story was wrong. The other stories I tell you are about passengers who were rude, who turned out to be carrying something heavy, who I came to understand. This one is the opposite. This one is a passenger who was kind, who turned out to be carrying something rotten, who I never got to understand. I want to be honest with you. I'm telling you this because I think it's important. The lesson from the rude passengers is don't judge harshly. Be patient. They might be going through something. The lesson from this one is harder. The lesson is don't judge at all. Not harshly, not generously, not anything. People are not what they show you. They're not what they hide from you either. They're a third thing, something underneath both that you will probably never see. I'm not going to tell you to be suspicious of everyone. That's a terrible way to live. I'm just going to tell you that I think about her sometimes, and I hope she is somewhere becoming someone else again. And I hope this time she becomes someone good. I hope she stops eventually. I hope she finds a small life she can live without lying about. I hope she gets to be herself for a little while before she dies. I don't know if she will, but I drove her 4 times, and she was kind to me. That's what I have. That's what I'm allowed to keep. I keep it.